Hi everyone, I wanted to make a quick PowerPoint for you, and I'm sorry if you can hear banging in my background, but as you know, I'm having a new deck put on our house and there's literally banging from every single corner. But I wanted to make you a PowerPoint presentation so that you can have an idea and an overview of what we're going to talk about and do as an in-class activity for Discovery next week. This is truly one of my favorite topics just to talk about in general. And the reason I like talking about discovery so much is that it helps us understand how we take a case from a complaint, which we said were the unproven allegations, all the way through to the trial, and how we collect the type of evidence that we as the plaintiff, or if we're representing the defendant, want in order to prove our case. Just like we were talking about in class on Thursday when I used the example of being terminated from a position. And if you're the plaintiff that's been fired from a job, we want to think about all the different types of evidence that we would want to show a jury to prove that discrimination took place. So we talked a little bit about brainstorming the type of information that we want. But what I wanted to point out in the PowerPoint that I will spend some class time also on Tuesday, but this is like a nice introduction for you, is to talk about that toolbox of discovery. To think about that, the idea that when we want to collect that information, when we want to speak to a witness that might have information, or look at somebody's emails, or maybe watch a security video, that we can't just show up at somebody's house and say, hey, show me all your emails, or knock on somebody's office door and say, can I look through your files? That sounds like a nice idea, but it doesn't really work that way. So the way that it works is we have to go into our toolbox. And the toolbox is set for us by the rules of civil procedure. And I don't think I put these on your Blackboard site, so I will do that right after I make this video. But if you take a look, beginning at Rule 26, all the way through, I believe even Rule 37-ish, is all rules pertaining to discovery. I don't want you to memorize them. I don't want you to know them by heart. But I want to make you aware that they are there. And these rules tell us the type of information that we are allowed to discover, like what it is that we can discover. And they also give us tools about how to get that information. So the first one I want to show you, and actually if you open on your own, if you open the handout about discovery tools and documents, the first rule that I highlight for you is this one. It's Rule 26B. You can pause this video and read it on your own, which is actually what I'd like you to do. But take a look at what we call the scope of discovery. What is, if you were to draw like a big circle and you say, okay, what am I allowed to learn about what the other party has? That's called the scope of discovery. And discovery is really broad. So the way to think about it is this. When we get down to the actual trial, the judge follows rules of evidence about what is actually allowed to come in. This is where you often hear attorneys making objections, certain evidence can't come into trial. So the universe of evidence that actually comes in at trial is a smaller circle than the universe of evidence that we are allowed to discover. Another way of saying that is discovery is broader than what ultimately gets introduced at trial. So you can see this by the standard here. It actually says, unless otherwise limited, parties may obtain discovery regarding any matter that's not privileged, which is relevant to the subject matter of the pending action, whether it relates to any claim or any defense, including the existence, and it goes on from there. And then look at this last part here. It is not grounds for objection, meaning you can't object to a discovery request if the information sought is inadmissible at trial, if the evidence appears reasonably calculated to lead to the discovery of admissible evidence. That's a mouthful. But again, pause it and read it on your own. But what the rules of civil procedure are telling us is that even if we think I don't want the other party to see that email of mine. We can't object to it just because it's not admissible at trial. If that email or that set of documents might reasonably lead to the discovery of other admissible evidence, it can be seen as part of discovery. Discovery is really broad. Now, you might be thinking, oh my goodness, if I'm part of a litigation, people will see all my personal information. But the truth is, it's not meant, just because information is discoverable in a litigation doesn't mean that information suddenly becomes publicly available. So don't think that this information is now being shared with everybody. It's still private. It's used just for the scope of that lawsuit itself. Okay, so first thing I want you to know is how broad the stroke of discovery is. So we have a lot of information that we can look for to find information that's relevant to our claim or our defense, or might lead to the discovery of information that's relevant to our claim or defense. I also want you to see that part of the rule highlights not just the information that we're allowed to find, but we can find out where it is, who has it, so it's more than just that the information exists. It's helping us figure out how to get it. Okay, remember I mentioned in class that we're going to talk specifically about 3 of the discovery tools in the toolbox. So this is the how do I get that information? How do I get that email? How do I get the list of individuals who are at that meeting? So the first one is this one here. Rule 33 is interrogatories. Again, you can pause the video and read the whole rule for yourself, but I'll just tell you a little bit about what they are. Interrogatories are written questions that one party sends to another party to answer, and they must be answered in writing, and they must be answered by the party or someone. If it's a corporation, we find a corporate official who's authorized to speak for the party, and that individual must sign the answers under the pains and penalty of perjury, that everything they put in that answer to an interrogatory is true. So I'll say that again. It's a way to send written questions from one party to another party, and you can ask them any matter related to the litigation, and they must be answered back in writing, signed under the pains and penalty of perjury. Now, let me point out a couple of key points about this that we'll talk about in class. Interrogatories are only party to party. We cannot send interrogatories to a witness, a third party. Even if that third party has information we want, we can't use this tool of the interrogatory to obtain that from the third party, the witness. Interrogatories can go from plaintiff to defendant, defendant to plaintiff, but they cannot go to third parties. We'll also talk, and you'll have a chance to see here that there's a limitation on the number of interrogatories that you can discuss. So what I want you to think about for Tuesday is what kinds of information might a party want to obtain through an interrogatory? What might you be able to ask the other party in writing? Now, we have other ways to find out this information, but interrogatories are incredibly useful. Remember, we talked in class on Thursday about the example of not knowing who were the employment decision makers if you were fired by your job. You might be like, I have a boss, but there's people in human resources. My boss has colleagues. As the party, as the plaintiff, I can ask as an interrogatory to ask my employer defendant to identify the names of all the individuals who were involved in the employment decision to terminate my employment. And then think about what you get back. You get back from the employer as an answer to the interrogatory a list of all the individuals that were involved in the employment decision. And then think about it. You can now go ask for the emails of those people. So interrogatories are incredibly useful. The second one I wanted to mention is this one, document production. Now again, document production is a very broad statement, but it basically means documents or things. So pause the video, take a look at this rule here. Look at all the tangible and even electronic documents and things that you can now obtain. Pictures, photographs, videos, recordings, all of those things. This would be where your emails, text messages, social media postings. These are all documents and things. This is hugely broad. And again, this is where you would find a boatload of information. But notice, it's party to party. So one party makes a document request to the other party, and the plaintiff to the defendant to the plaintiff. If you have a third party, like a witness that has, let's say somebody was there photographing an event and you're like, oh, I want that person's photos, you have to use another discovery tool called the subpoena. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in class, but the document production is party to party. Notice that you can even use the document production to go visit a place, like if the lawsuit involves, I don't know, some medical equipment that's at a hospital that you can't, you can actually have permission to go onto the land and see that equipment or that space if that's something that needs to be done that can't easily be replicated in a photograph or an image or something like that. Okay, so I want you to start thinking for Penny Peters and Donnie Davis, what kind of what would they want to use interrogatories for to obtain information, and what kind of documents and things might they want to obtain from the other party? And if it's a third party, we can get that too. We just have to use a subpoena, not the document production, because that's only party to party. Okay, the last one that I want to spend time with that I did not put on this handout, but it's actually in our PowerPoint, is more about depositions. That's really the third big one: interrogatories, requests for production of documents, and depositions. I'll spend a little bit more time in class talking about depositions, but take a look at what is a deposition. And a deposition is an opportunity to take the oral testimony of a party or a witness or a third party under oath, where you can actually see the person. Well, a little strange in COVID times, obviously, but normally you sit across the table from each other. And so you, as the plaintiff, have the opportunity to ask questions of the defendant or vice versa. And the person answering the questions, who's called the deponent, must answer those questions under oath, again, under the pains and penalties of perjury, so no lying. So it's obviously a hugely important tool for discovery, because you have an opportunity to hear the type of testimony that someone will give at the trial. There's another huge advantage of taking a deposition, and that's that you get to see the kind of witness somebody would be, because you actually are watching them, again, normally in face-to-face, but you can see if somebody's fidgeting, if they're having trouble making eye contact, if they're yawning. And as the attorney taking the deposition, and we'll go over this terminology of taking the deposition and defending the deposition, you have the opportunity to assess, is this person going to be a good witness? Why or why not? So there's more you get with the deposition, you get the information about the actual, what are they going to testify about? But you also get to assess what they're going to be like at a trial. Okay, quick overview of discovery, the scope of discovery, interrogatories, document requests, and now depositions. Take a look at the handouts that are here. In Tuesday's class, we will spend time in class going over and now somebody's in the back of my video, and now you have to wave hi. And in class on Tuesday, we will do some in-class activities where you guys will have an opportunity to talk about the types of discovery tools that you want to use for Penny Peters and Donnie Davis, and we'll do it as an in-class activity. Now you can't see me at all because somebody opened the shade and did not know that I was making a video where I needed the blinds to be closed. All right, have a good weekend, everybody, and I will see you on Tuesday.